Hello, I am Kevin Anderson.
And I'm Adam Okada.
And we are clinical educators and hosts of the Ask the Educator podcast, brought to you by Healthmark, a Getting a company.
Are you a sterile processing technician, infection preventionist, or biomedical engineer? No matter your role, if you're involved in medical device processing, this podcast is for you. Our goal is to equip you with the knowledge and tools for excellence in medical device processing.
Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. This is your host, Kevin Anderson, and with me, as always, co-host Adam Okada. And following our international webinar, we have our special guest, Mr. Stefan Kovach. And Stefan,
hey, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, thanks, man. It's always good to have you on the podcast. I want to say, I got to see this webinar live and really thought it was well done. I'm not just saying that, but I hope a lot of people out there attended. And for those that did not have the chance to attend, because I know there was a lot of attendees that registered and maybe didn't get to watch live, don't forget to go back and watch the recording. That being said, for those who did miss it or don't have the chance to see the recording, we have this podcast episode to at least give everybody the highlights. All right. So let's go over the highlights of this thing. You talked about this one. It was called Open Wide, why it's important to keep those instruments open in the pre-cleaning and automated cleaning. So let's just open it up, Steve.
Open it up.
Yeah.
Kevin,
sorry for the pun. Yeah, I know. Sorry about the pun.
Well, one of the things I wanted to stress is the importance, and I didn't get a lot on the teamwork part of it, that the OR has to be part of this process too, on things being opened and how they send it down. There is time in the OR for things to be wiped better, pre-clean, pre-treatment. And in some of these IFUs, they say they should be sent back in the open position after being used. And Kevin, you're an OR nurse and that, and we have to build that up. And at one point in the webinar, I said, once you get that case card or whatever it comes to you, it's your responsibility. And if your partner, the OR or OB, whoever it was, didn't do it, fill this stuff out properly to work on it. But once you get it, it's your responsibility, but it's your responsibility to let somebody know it wasn't done correctly. And so that's the first part. And I wish I would have stressed that a little more. So the reason you want these open wide, at least during the cleaning part, is if you don't, there's a higher chance of bioburden being left in there and being hard, and then it goes to the assembly side and they see it and it comes back. It makes it harder to clean. But some of that you might not be able to get because it gets really deep in the box locks. That causes fractures and causes other issues. So it's getting the staff to understand why it's got to be opened at that time and why it needs to be rinsed properly and so on. Because repair costs go up, damage instruments, and then it slows down the assembly process. I don't know. Hopefully I got some of those thoughts across.
When you were doing the webinar and you were talking about, why it's so important to keep those things open, the first thing that I thought of, and you had great visuals. By the way, if you haven't seen the webinar, go check it out because there's just incredible visuals we're not going to be able to describe over a podcast. I have limited intelligence and that's just going to be a problem. So Steve has this great photo of like inside of a ronger, and there's bioburden stuck in there in a place where you really can't get to it with a toothbrush or a channel brush or any of those things. So you have to get some kind of small specialty brush to get in those areas. And so box locks, again, another place that we can't reach with the brushes that we have.
You know what, Adam, you see that, this is not meant as a plug to everybody out there, but you have your fleece stem and different things. There's a way, I have a video that you take it and you pull it through when you open up, like on a hemostat. There's a way you can pull that through and clean it and then move it. And those are maybe some videos maybe we can put up somewhere. again, they're very difficult to open up. So that's why I cited some of the research that these box locks, because the narrowness, it changes. If you look at a scissor, you look at that box, it's not the same gap opening for many reasons, and water, blood, or fluid, I should have said maybe better, will flow to the least path of resistance. So but it's getting the staff to understand the why and take the time. But then the manager also has to understand that time. He needs to know how to use that to show that he needs his staff to do it properly. And that's what's also very important. They're under so much pressure to turn around, push it through, push it through, push it through. But you've got to show the time needed to do it right.
What I thought was interesting, specifically from the webinar, is some of the things that you shared IFU-wise regarding how to properly load the automated washer, in terms of what constitutes open wide for an automated washer versus what constitutes being open in the open position for sterilization. And, obviously you had some tools and things like that you shared that can help people with that process. So can you kind of share a little bit more about that portion? Because I think once people understand why they need to do these things, then the next logical step was, well, how do we do that? Especially considering the time constraints and the resource restraints and all of that. And I think one of the nice things is these resources aren't exactly going to break the bank either.
No.
So,
well, I'm going to do this is an old one, and I didn't have the picture, and I really believe you've probably seen them. There used to be these peg type stringers that were, and now there's a company coming out doing it, I think, that has a tray with pegs on it, and it used to be flat, and you could move the pegs around, and you just put your hemostats on it or your scissors, and then you sent it through. So it was keeping them open like the adjustable stringer, and then you sent that back through. There are just so many possibilities with these stringers that are out there, and I think it's in the Zimmer or Smith and Nephew, I was just reading, they were talking about the importance of using the pegs to keep the instruments open during sterilization on certain things. And in some of them, they tell you use this, you pull the tray out and you use that insert tray, you know what I'm talking about? And you put the instruments there because there's nothing around them, but it keeps them open. There's tools, so many of them. It's like I say, it won't break the bank. But if you know you have to keep it open, then go search for something to do it. Because if not, your staff's going to make them up,
And that, you made it a great point during the webinar of, there was, groove directors and the probes and freer elevators used to keep rongers open. There are things like spreaders and clamps that can hold these things in place so that you don't have to use the creative people downstairs are going to find whatever they can to MacGyver something together. And the other thing that you touched on in this presentation was that we really need to have policies and procedures, work instructions, all these kinds of things that show our process and show the right way to do this. Because a lot of sterile processing techs just start to fall into this routine of doing things the same way, and the instruments end up in the closed position and flat on, and there's a big pile of them going through the washer. And if the washer can't use impingement on the instruments, especially the jaws and the box locks, it's not going to come clean. So it's kind of a useless process. So what are some resources? You talked about them during the webinar. What are some resources we can use to create that best practice?
Before you say that, before we get in some resources, I want to stress this point. You said this. When you read about double action rongeurs, they say they just need to be open for cleaning. Doesn't say they got to be real wide. But when you read before it, it said they say you must brush thoroughly in different areas. And that's why the one when you open up, I said use the trumpet brush. That fits right in there. So the goal is you got to get the gunk out and do it. And then you buy these little spreaders. They put the pressure to open it up so you can get the water and the cleaning solution into it. But if you don't clean the gunk out, there's not enough pressure to do it. So the resources are first the OEM. Does the OEM say to do something? Now, you guys are going to challenge me on this, and I didn't put this in here, but do you know there's an OEM that states that for sterilization, you put a piece of wrap for bulldogs to keep them open? Did you know that?
Yes, I have seen that. I remember that. Yes.
No, I have not seen
Yes.
that.
So that's why I'm saying first go to the OEM and say, how do I keep this open? Do you have anything? And of course, it might be five, it might be like, oh God, I could find this from somebody else. But the OEM is the first one to go to have them explain, what do you mean natural, relaxed position or open? And if they say they don't have anything and they've explained it to you, it says you just have to have some pressure or something to make the spring, you know what I mean? So then you go to one of your other vendors, like a Healthmark, and do you have something that opens it up and we show pictures? There's a couple companies sell it. So then you start with the OEM, they give you direction, and then you go to the next thing, and then you find what it is to keep it open. Is that what you're talking about, Kevin? The resources, how to go through it to critically think to get what you need?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, that's good advice. You always, start with the OEM, and sometimes they have something that they can recommend and sometimes they don't. So then, what is that next line of defense? Well, you check other companies like you mentioned us. Yeah, we have some different things in the catalog that can help you out, from especially the cleaning side of things. We have that washer caddy that you showed in the webinar where it just holds everything nice and open for the cleaning process. We have adjustable stringers, that kind of stuff that can work both for the cleaning process and also for the sterilization process, which remember that's one of the things that you kind of showed. One of the details that you showed is during the cleaning process, wide open means like 90 degrees open, which is really wide open. But when you come to the sterilization process, it's just unclamped, right? And so
that's
those
right.
Adjustable stringers are nice because they work for both processes. So is there anything else, resource wise or otherwise, that comes to mind that we should share?
I do think the one article I talked about from AKI, where they talked about the importance of not laying on the instruments with overshadowing. This gets back to why you open it up. But when it comes to resources, people are strapped for money. And I think it was 2 years ago, HSPA, Marie from Iowa, Marie Brewer, talked about she needed money to get things and how creative she was. And their gift shop donates money to the hospital. And she used that money to, I think, get fists or, borescopes. If you are strapped for money, there could be these funds within your hospital you never went to, and find out, not that you don't want them to buy incubators for the nursery, but you know what? Even your $500 or $1,000 to get maybe 50 stringers or these things, to say, I need $500 to get this, and here's the IFU. You put it together like an S bar and say, this is my issue. We want to prevent this. Could you help donate some money? And then that helps raise the awareness of your department. And then you get it in the local PR for the hospital, the handy shop or gift shop people, or whatever, or there are these different other little modes, and maybe you can get $500 to $1,000. They can still make the big donation, and they're showing they're doing it to all departments. I don't know. That's what resources.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And honestly, using those tools at your disposal. What I did at my facility, because I was turned down several times in capital budget for a $7,000 borescope. Several times I was trying to buy this borescope and they kept turning it down. Then we recruited this bariatric surgeon who I'm sure got hundreds of thousands of dollars in bonus to come to the hospital. I'm sure they were paying him well into the six figures to be there. And I was wondering, where did that money come from? You're turning down my $7,000 borescope. You're bringing in this world-renowned surgeon. And what I had to do was I made a deal with my COO, or the financial officer. And I said, look, if I can cut our repair budget by $7,000, can I get my borescope? Or if I can do this, can I get a raise for my staff? So I was making these little deals. Like, I'll cut my budget and I'll figure out ways to save, but I need certain things for my department. So those, again, are resources you can have.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just have to figure out creative ways to advocate for your department.
I was just thinking, too bad you didn't know the surgeon before he came in and said, hey, could you just add a borescope on there for me?
Yeah, write it into his contract.
Just write it in. You know what? Maybe hey, everybody out there, find out these new physicians coming in and say, you know what? So I can help keep your instruments open, I need to buy these spreader things from Healthmark. It's only $1,000 or whatever. Give me a borescope, and oh yeah, put it in there, and boom. Hey, you know what? It might work. I don't know. Anyway,
they got the money to do it for sure.
We got slapped. Yeah, there is money. It's figuring out where to get it.
Yeah.
So, and again, you need risk. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ann.
No. I just wanted to make sure that, so we're going to wrap up here in a little bit, but do you have any final thoughts for the listeners out there that you want to leave them with on keeping their instruments open?
Yeah, I really do that. The majority of our educators do CPRs, and this is just a basic function, a basic thing we all should do. And if we can get this right and do it all the time, we then can keep moving to other different functions within our department. But this is as basic as it gets. And we should never be putting full instrument trays from orthopedics in. The only ones are the ones with the screws and the plates. That's okay, because they don't want them all over the place. But everything else has to come out. And there's a reason for it. And we want it to be as clean as possible on the assembly side so they can assemble quickly and inspect it. It's one of the basic things we have to do. And so let's just all try to do a better job of anybody who comes in the department in that area say, wow, everything's open. It's as wide as it can get. They're doing a good job. And now you're setting this example. That's about it.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Adam. And great points. And don't underestimate the partnership with an OR, especially if you do a lot of ortho. They have a lot of take apart stuff, or laparoscopic instruments that are now take apart. Hopefully they're sending all that stuff down, taken apart for you. But that wraps it up for this episode. Thanks y'all for listening. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe, and also check out our other educational offerings at hmark.com under the education tab. All right.
Hey, one last thing before you go. Harry, July 18th. I know this repeats, and later on, rewatch when it comes on. Watch Harry, our man from overseas. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
All opinions expressed on this episode are those of the presenters. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Before using any medical device, it's important to review the manufacturer's instructions for use and consult with a professional.
For any questions or feedback, please reach out to us at asktheeducator@hmark.com.